Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew. And tonight we have another knife review. In fact, this here is the Civivi Sentinel Strike. This is a pretty significant. I wanted to call it a Wharncliffe or a clipped Wharncliffe. Constant arc. If this would have been down with the clip, that's a reverse-tanto. In fact, just to put it out there, if that blade were switched around, if this was even just like if this was a straight with like a swedge and this was like a full flat, that would actually be a really sick tanto blade as well. The way that curves and goes to a fairly acute point is pretty sick. Both in this, it's not quite a full flat grind, so you can see right there down the middle of the this is curving, but essentially right along that bottom part of the deployment hole is where it goes. So it's not completely full, but it does it in such a way that when you go and pick your finger there, it's absolutely full thickness on top and not right at the bottom, which is nice. It helps that deployment hole be utilized. Couple other things first on the dimensions here. Number one, this is a K110 blade with an aluminum handle. Let's see if we can get that for you, because I believe it's right there. If you can see the gray spot, there it is. There's the K110. Really, really good D2 is what you should read that as. Not quite CPM, but still high, very good D2 on the, very good high quality D2. All right, overall length, 8.5 inches. Don't have to really go as the crow flies. Cutting edge is just over 3.25. Overall length is slightly more from tip to scale instead of tip to tail. So just really close to that 4-inch mark. Huge choil. Again, cutting path to me is really what it should be, 3.5. It's longer than the standard 3.5 cutoff. Most places that have restrictions are at 3.5. A lot of cities bring it down even closer to 3 inches. A lot of European countries have it. I say a lot. There's a handful of them. Obviously, you have other restrictions where you can't have locking blades and all that sort of stuff. All right. So let's do a little bit more on here. Let's get some more of these standard measurement tests out of here. Just under 3.5 ounces. Not bad for something that has a larger than 3.5-inch blade, depending on how you do it. That's a pretty good. There's also a glass breaker. Let me see if I can get that out here. There's also a glass breaker in the tip. Okay, so there we go. Wow, may have even had a chance to fix the focus there. All right, so let's see if this will work. Autofocus isn't. There's a glass breaker you can see. All right, autofocus is doing its thing. Great action on there. Couple more, let's just say, referential measurements here. The Spyderco sandwich paramilitary 2. As you can see, hand space is greater than the paramilitary 2. Similar cutting edge length. So a lot of hand space on this. Really want to make sure. Oh, better do the full sandwich though. Better get that whole thing in there. Again, paramilitary 3 is a little bit small for this comparison. This is obviously a full-size knife, larger than you may think. In fact, just to really establish that, there is the Rat 1 in D2. Pretty much the same length, full size, and just to give you an idea, compared to the Rat 2 in D2, much, much larger. So there, yeah, it's definitely got some size on it. And just to have a Kershaw comparison, it is just a blur. A lot more edge length on here, but not nearly as much hand space, including the choil. And of course, not just any leak, but a random leak. Look at how much bigger that is than the leak. Significant hand space, long blade, very straight. Wharncliffe Civivi has really got something here, in my opinion. And of course, just a little bit more popularity contest or knives that are popular. So we can see here, that is the Benchmade Bug Out. Lots of handle, and of course the Civivi Elementum, as you can see, much larger than both of those. Definitely, again, full size for those who need one or can handle it. And whatever. It is larger than my wiener. What can I say? All right, back to the rest of it. The damn nice category is design. This is actually a very interesting design to me. It has this rolled over integral backspacer type inlay. This is actually really fantastic. Very, very open handle design. The 3 holes right here are pretty cool. That is an interesting little bit of design language, which I think is incredible. I'm pretty sure this is injection molded FRN type stuff, but it does a great job. It's thick enough. It's got holes. It's able to be cleaned. It has back spacer type thickness back here where the lanyard goes, as well as the glass breakers put in. Reversible pocket clip because of the mounted from the end. Mounted from the rear with the screw going in, which is the way I like to deep carry. All right. Yeah, very, very good. Standard solid handle. A little bit of finger, single mushroom style, arched back. Great saber grip design. Can really tuck your hand in there and make use of that edge. Choke up. Same thing if you want to get a little bit, your thumb starts to get into the blade, the cutting path a little bit, and you feel like to me it feels like it's a little bit more intended for the type of gorilla grip choke up. But you get into something like you can do an overhand grip back, but the balance is right there, so you can definitely do it. First thing I naturally go to is this. You can also do a full up pinch as well as very good control. Believe it or not, that used to be a sliver. I used this knife to pick that sliver. Happens every once in a while, especially when I'm gardening. So yeah, it allows you that kind of control. It really, really does. There's just so much wonderful stuff in there that, when it gets right down to it, that's what it does. So yeah, this is pretty good. And honestly, that reverse-tanto Warncliffe, I forgot some measurements because this has to be shown. First of all, on the back where there's none, right? 115 thousandths, that's just below 3 millimeters. 3 millimeters probably was pre-finished, and there's a coating on there. Now, I don't know if I can do this justice. This is ridiculously thin behind the edge. It's probably a little bit less than that. 14 to 15 thousandths. I would tell you that if I got it exactly behind the edge, it's probably 14 thousandths. But depending upon where I go, and if I twist it, because you get too thin, and the torsional motions are pretty significant. I'll go with 14.5 thousandths behind the edge, 15 thousand. That's really thin for what's essentially D2. Incredibly thin behind the edge. I've seen a lot of people do this. I'm going to do it. It's not on the... Oh, boy. Sorry, I'm not trying to provide a lot of resistance, so this may not be the best option here. All right, let me see it. There we go. This is not thin paper. It is. I don't know if you can tell how smooth it is out the box, but that is ridiculously good. Again, it does kind of slice, but paper towels are not my favorite material simply because it depends on which brand you have and how they arrange those fibers. Some papers like to cut one direction or another. Anyway, pretty good factory edge. Civivi usually does great. Really thin behind the edge. Great geometry. Incredible geometry right here at the base of the blade. and pretty good out of the tip. Very robust tip, right? Given the geometry. So it goes to a pretty robust geometry out of the tip, protecting that tip, which is D2, which may not be the toughest, but you got a lot of material behind it. Very, very good design. Ergonomics, again, saber, pinch, just the overhand choke up, especially with this Wharncliffe utility knife style, really incredible. Really great everyday use. In fact, and as well as comfort, the ergonomic design, as well as just the overall aesthetic design, incredible. Like, it's almost got a dustbuster sort of ergonomics, which is really, really cool. The FRN may worry some people, but I got to tell you, the relative softness of the FRN compared to the aluminum not only gives you some traction, but it adds to the comfort. Deep carry pocket clip, no hot spots. It'll work in all the grips and all that sort of stuff. And the aesthetics, I like the red and black color in this particular case. It comes in several colors. But man, the aesthetics of that curve and that blade, I think, are fantastic. And it rolls up pretty compact. I mean, pair of 3, right? Overall, just a little bit higher. And that's pretty significant. Those are a pair of 3, pair of 2, paramilitary 2 and stuff. Have pretty high profiles. The only thing I would say is, as much as I like the thumb dud deployment, there is nothing wrong in this design with the flipper tab, the button, and the deployment hole. And with the, yeah, it gives you a nice surface for the pinch grip, but it's not necessary in this case. I would say either get rid of the deployment hole or the thumb studs, and in this case, I would say the thumb studs over the deployment hole. The deployment hole not only adds aesthetic value, it allows slow rolling, has the long deployment area. If I were to pick one, I think the thumb studs, with their ability to get somewhat in the way, though not completely, they are just, let me give you a sort of thing. They are just out of the way of that, just barely, of that cutting path. So it's an interesting bit. I think the aesthetics are incredible. This not only looks like a knife, it has sort of that je ne sais quoi of just, it looks aggressive. It looks like a knife without looking too much like a tactical or knife design just for stabby, pokey, hurting people type things. This is a utility knife, pardon the expression, on steroids. This is a utility knife that has more going for it, that has a whole lot more into the design and everything else. Aesthetics to me are great. The little 3 holes match on arc, right? The center line going through there, both sides. Very good design cues, extremely well chamfered on the aluminum, which just gives you, it's flat, right? It's not completely contoured, but it has the kind of chamfering that almost makes it feel contouring. And the mechanics, this thing's drop shut, like most others. Extremely crisp button, even though it is almost flush. Look, I just roll in my thumb, just putting my thumb over the top. Cannot get that to go. In fact, you have to make a concerted effort on this one to get out of your grip and disengage that button all the way. I want to really, really make that clear. Look at that button. Look at when it's open. Look at how flat that button is in the recess. That requires an absolute, that's not going to be pinched. I have to roll my thumb, right? I'm not going to get that in a pinch grip. I have to roll my finger over and squish it. And even then, I have to get the tip of my finger. And if I'm up here like this, then I can. That's it. I have to be very deliberate in pushing that button. Rolling my thumb over it, rolling your finger over it. And that's a good thing. That's a mechanical design feature that makes a button lock really safe. This kind of thing, then coming down on your finger, now it won't. Your finger's going to be right there if you're in a pinch grip or another one. It won't go down on your finger either. That the flipper tab pretty much guarantees it. which to me makes this one of the most finger-safe button locks out there. It's got all sorts of design features to keep it from closing on your hand accidentally, which means you get to not have to concern yourself with the idiosyncrasies of your knife while you're trying to perform a task. If I'm trying to cut open a box, I don't have to have my attention divided between where the blade is and where my hand is, because my attention should be on where that cutting edge is. My hand shouldn't be a placement issue. I should be able to grab the knife and use it, at least in my opinion. And this one allows for that. That to me is outside of the standard mechanical just excellence that we're seeing from a lot of pocket knives now, where everything's very well tuned, very well engineered, designed. Again, as you may have heard some people say, and I've mentioned it a couple times, excellence is the new standard. And that is absolutely, absolutely true. It is far more notable when something isn't well done than when it is. I think the single biggest issue we may have anymore is, can we trust what's printed on the blade? And that's, it's like food. Can you trust what they put on the label? And the answer is, to an extent. And it depends. So I'll go ahead and move along here, because the design, very well done. That reverse-tanto has a single arc all the way across, just like a tanto should. If this had another slight curve right there instead of the straight, this would look like a reverse-tanto blade, and not completely the same as, say, this as a reverse-tanto. This is much closer to reverse-tanto with the two pans and all that sort of stuff. But the idea behind it, with other than some designs to make the way they intend you to grip it better, that's a reverse-tanto. I won't say that very often. But that is indeed a reverse-tanto in my opinion. And again, you could flip this blade over, make this the cutting edge with the small tanto tip, make that the clip down with the slight swedge, and that would be a full flat grind on that, or even just a mostly flat, would be a pretty sick blade all on its own. Wharncliffe design with the clip, a reverse-tanto, very good, very easy to sharpen, and fun to do. And in some ways, that's the noteworthy point. This is a clipped Wharncliffe in an aluminum handle by Civivi. The integral backspacer does great in the design. It is a full-size knife without seeing... Even when you see it doesn't have that extra large look, but it is a full-size knife. In fact, it would be difficult for me to carry this where I live unless I went outside of the city limits, simply because my city limits, and I live in a megalopolis area, and pretty much all of the city limits, it's just better to assume that all of them are pretty much limited to a 3.5-inch blade length until you get out into some of the more rural areas. Just as the reality of where I live. So this may not be the most carryable knife for me, but man, this is a very useful knife. The intended purpose and noteworthy points are that it's a relatively new and unique design from Civivi, and to me that is good. This begs for a tough steel. This begs for other steels. This is a fantastic design, in the intended purpose and the idea that this is an EDC design, okay? This is, with that point, a package piercer, right? A shrink wrap slicer, the amount of control you can have with that tip, and it being as robust as it is geometrically, as well as just a good cutting area and the flat. For something like shrink wrap or any of that sort of stuff, this is a shrink wrap slicer. With the high grind and the thin behind the edge and relatively thin blade stock, this is a ridiculously good cardboard carver. And in the reverse grip, in fact, it becomes almost like a swayback. It becomes very, very good. And that large choil, either behind it or in front of it, the flipper type thing, makes it an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. You get the right angle, and you're opening letters quite nicely. In fact, it does it very, very well. It does those EDC tasks incredibly well. And I actually think that is the intended purpose. This is sort of a utility knife, or like a utility blade angle. It has the Wharncliffe type style like that. this is an everyday utility knife, a large sized, good ergonomics, better edge retention, right? Better edge, not necessarily better edge stability, but better edge retention than your average utility knife. It's not as thin, but again, you get more. It's more robust while doing the same tasks, and that's pretty good. I think this delivers on that intended purpose astoundingly well. Just an incredible piece of engineering and all that sort of stuff for what it is. And that'll bring me to the cost to value ratio. This is, again, not the cheapest knife. In fact, let me double check because I have been called out on this before. I believe this is in a much better space. So, sorry for the long wait, you guys. I want to make sure I get the price right. All right, so yeah, we're looking at around, I believe, $85 for the K110 version, which isn't bad at all. Yeah, 80 something bucks. They do have the Damascus style blade, which has, I believe that's 9CR18 and 440C that it's mixed up in there. Not bad. A little bit more, a little bit more. That's just over $100. Very good pricing for how big it is, the aluminum handle and stuff. Now that doesn't mean that is not a competitive area, because at that you're within $15 of other designs that have things like S35VN and other steels. K110 is a great steel, but at this $85 price point for something like this model or this version, you're looking at a very competitive area. And it's not, yeah, the size may be different, but again, you start getting things like S35VN, again, smaller knives, but still. And then even just some other comparisons, just to put it out there, of just D2, you get, not that the rats are as available as they used to be, but you get a full-size knife for a few dollars cheaper. And that brings quite a bit out. Is it the best cost-value ratio? No, it's not. The D2 steel, or K110, while good, doesn't really offer a premium. It's not as good as CPM D2. It's not as good as the particle metallurgy D2, but it's somewhere in between. It's not PSF. It's not CPM. All that sort of stuff. It just isn't the same thing. To say K110 is the same as CPM D2 or PSF D2 just really isn't giving it. It's just not quite true. So yeah, the price point starts to creep up there. It's like an artificial inflation, quite honestly. For something that used to be in the $60 range, and Civivi still produces D2 and other style stuff in the $60 range, the extra price, the extra 30-something%, if this was $65, $70, believe it or not, that extra 15 to 30% for us essentially the same stuff. This isn't that much more machining. It's aluminum and there's a little bit for the backspacer, but it's essentially not that much. So I just, the cost to value ratio is high. Civivi's always are. It's just not the best cost to value ratio out there. There's other things there's just other ones that are close to this. This is going to have this has the carbon fiber scale, so you can get the Lander. Again, as I was saying, for the $100-something for just a little bit more, you can get something like the Banter. It's not the full size. If you're looking for full size knives, there are others that are still out there. Again, not K110, not the button lock, and all that sort of stuff. So there are things out there that are high value. There's very, very high value out there. In fact, Civivi's own Nitro V Conspirator. Very, very similar in so many ways. Another high value knife in their lineup. But there's not a whole lot out there that competes specifically. And the uniqueness of its design, the utility of that reverse-tanto / Warncliffe, man, it's it still gives it something, and it's an aluminum handled, one of the best button locks out there that I've tried personally. And that's, I love my button locks, and this is one of the best. It's not a sublime thing completely. It's crisp action, absolutely deliberate button engagement, multiple deployment. The fidget factor is real, right? Multiple deployments. Of course, the reverse flick, the button, right? It's on there. Very, very good. And that really brings me to the expectations and requests. The cost to value is pretty good, right? The noteworthy points, the blade, the design, there's design elements that are unique, like the or integral backspacer over mold. The blade design, again, flip that blade over, I'll buy that knife. I'm not kidding. I think there's more than a few people who, if you flip this blade over and gave it similar geometry or a slight makeover on that geometry, would still buy this knife, because that's a fantastic blade design. I really can't stress enough how much I like the blade design. Which brings me to the other part, the toughness on this is an S35 yen or S45 yen. Honestly, if you'll take D2 and you can do it with this geometry, S45 yen is another great option. This is just, I wouldn't go S90V. You need some toughness in there, so like S35 to S30V in those things. S45, those would be where I'd go, or Magna Cut or something like that. But just in the slightly higher end, again, CPM D2. CPM 154. There's several things that I would love to see this in, including a titanium version. Give me slightly higher. That would be an expensive knife, so the cost to value ratio goes low. But for some people, it's there. What I'm sitting here thinking is, for the $100 to $130 range, you can have better steel. You can have a carbon fiber overmold. There's other things you can do as far as materials, and that would be my request. The expectation on this is that it would be a good utility knife. I thought, wow, that looks like it would be good utility cutter. The choil's a little big, but we'll see. Given how big the blade is, this thing actually isn't just a good utility cutter. This is outstanding. This is, to me, one of the better new designs. It's innovative without doing anything completely new. It takes a lot of stuff that's already out there and combines it in a way that's different and new, and actually, for me, really exciting. I really like this knife, even though I can't carry it very much. It does the EDC jobs very, very well. And for a D2, I mean, that's approximately like, what, 1 1/4 or something like that, 1 to 1 1/4% vanadium in there. Really, really good edge retention. The stability is for the heat treat, and I'm imagining because you have such tight tolerances, you can standardize that heat treatment better. It's good toughness, extremely thin behind the edge, and ridiculously sharp right out the box. So yeah, very well done. It exceeded my expectations. The only requests I have are that can I get some other steels, some other materials? Don't get me wrong, I love this, but I wouldn't want the fully dug out. Aluminum is great for a handle material. Wouldn't mind seeing a titanium. Titanium, carbon fiber, S45 yen, or Magna Cut. The toughness of Magna Cut makes it very, very well suited for something like this. But even something like CPM 154 will get you there. I wouldn't want to see 14C28N, though. It would make a wonderful stuff. I really like the edge retention of this, considering how much something like a utility tip like this gets used. So high edge retention with the kind of geometry this has definitely works very well with this design. So I'm going to kind of recap the design. Unique and innovative without doing anything really new. There's a couple of cool things, like a big finger choil. This is not a new handle design, right? This isn't a super new take. It's just a very well thought out, implemented, and executed design that utilizes old features in a new and innovative way. From the reverse mounted or the tail mounted pocket clip that really gives you full deep carry, the integral overmold backspacer, the unique take on a reverse-tanto blade, and of course what to me is one of the best button locks I've used in a long time. You've heard me complain on this channel multiple times about button locks that don't fully engage with their stuff. One of the other good ones out there is the CJRB Pyrite, right? Another one, a fan favorite for a lot of good reasons. So there are other ones out there. This is, to me, outside of the Malibu. I mean, honestly, I used to think that the Conspirator was my favorite butt lock, and this is still a really good design, and that high slicey blade, still very, very useful. Still, I have this review up, still a good button lock. It is no longer my favorite Civivi button lock. It's probably the only one I can still carry, but this is easily my favorite Civivi button lock. I haven't tried all of them. I haven't tried some of the Wii, like the Ziphius and stuff like that. But this is easily the most refined and well thought out button lock that I've tried in a long time. And I give that high praise. Again, I would say probably the only button lock right now that I've tried that's on the market is the Malibu, that I would give slightly higher marks to that. And that's really, really more about the button feel, and the way it feels and engages, the snappiness, the crispness of the detent when it comes to me. The ProTech Malibu is just that slightly bit better. But when you realize this is what, $70, $80 knife, and the ProTech is a $200 knife, for what is easily 2.5 times the price, or 150% increase in price, you get a lot of the same value out of this knife. Excuse me. And I have been going on and on, but I really want to bring this in because the aesthetics to me go right along with the design. It is unique, and the aesthetics are great. Like this looks cool. Like this just looks cool. Okay, that's a good blade. You can just put it in the light. You can flip it around. It looks classic. It's got good lines, and it looks cool. That's an aesthetics. And the mechanics, right on. That button is there. It's fidgety. It's incredibly smooth, well-engineered detent and everything else. Just really well done when it comes to it. It is noteworthy for that design, for the uniqueness and innovation that it does in its design, as well as its intended purpose of just a good everyday carry utility cutting knife. This does all that stuff great. It just is, from being able to put the entire blade, let me see if that'll even work. Entire blade down while having my fingers outside the way. I can have the entire Wharncliffe hit the surface while still having my fingers out of the way. That's fantastic. Right? That is quite the EDC capability, that you can do a long slice with that and have your fingers out of the way. Very, very cool. Cost to value ratio isn't the best, but given its uniqueness, it's still pretty high. And of course, at Civivi, the execution is phenomenal. Expectations, it exceeded mine. And I had high expectations. Civivi, I expect to get right. And again, it is far more notable if they don't. Civivi, you can usually expect them to get right. They actually exceeded my expectations, both in the design details and the mechanical action of its button lock. Absolutely exceeded my expectations. And again, the only request is, is this like a Ziphius? Is this something I can do? But this design, first of all, I'll take this design even with something like S35VN. Very good stuff. Also, give me a different design, fairly similar, but has this reversed into a belly tanto. That high belly tanto with a plunge line that goes like this and maybe a slight swedge that gives it an arc that goes down to the tip and to reinforce it. With that full flat grind like this. Yeah, give me that, please. That's a beautiful, beautiful blade. And so that's the only other request is, flip that thing over. Give me that belly tanto, because that's fantastic too. So really, really well done with high marks. I'm actually going to give this one a 94 in total marks. It is very well done. My single biggest complaint is just the size. There really isn't much else on there. Yeah, it's a budget and all that stuff, but the cost to value ratio sort of brings the budget knives into a better comparison to some of the higher value ones. So to me, this is really good. This is a 94 out of 100. This hits so many good things. It's affordable, even if it is just a tad bit expensive compared to like a $50 or $60 knife. But you get a lot of value for that money. There are things you buy. The design, the mechanics, the aluminum handle, the overall size and time that just that much more material takes to work. Little bits like the injection molded that's pinched for the lanyard hole and slotted for the reversible pocket clip. So you get these wonderful little design bits in there, including, I like to think, the idea that you could get multiple backspacers and swap them out. Wouldn't be easy like some of the Barbie knives out there, but it is still something you can do. This sort of frag pattern and something like carbon fiber would be super cool in the right kind of, say, like linen micarta or even rich light or paper micarta. Again, this could be super, super cool for lots of different things, and they're great design. I really recommend this design and this knife at such a price point. Again, high value, high engineering stuff put in there, and I really can't go off on this knife. This is one of my favorite Civivis in quite a while, and I really want to get that across. Highly recommendable, 94 out of 100. And with that, you guys, I am going to bring this to a close. This is the Civivi Sentinel Strike. Big name for a fantastic knife design. Very, very, don't want to say generic, but just classic handle shape with a lot of innovative design tricks, for lack of a better word at the moment, or design features maybe, to really maximize the design and give you little tiny experiential differences that help make this knife great. And so, go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like, be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew. You guys have a great rest of your night.